Welcome to Cruise News, your daily update on everything happening at sea. Visit cruisenews.io to see today's stories and sign up for email alerts. Episode angle. New Year's cruising in focus major ports and fireworks draw ships and crowds, while real-world onboard emergencies can still reshape itineraries fast.
It's great to be back.
It is fantastic to have you, and today we're doing a deep dive that, it really feels like it captures the entire spectrum of the cruise experience.
Oh, absolutely. We are really going to peel back the layers of the industry today. We're not just looking at the shiny brochure photos.
Not at all.
We're looking at the engine room of logistics that makes something as massive as New Year's Eve happen on a global scale.
Exactly. I want to welcome everyone to this deep dive. Usually when we talk about New Year's Eve, we think about our own plans.
Sure.
Maybe a house party. Maybe you're watching the ball drop on TV. For me, it's maybe just trying to stay awake past 10 p.m.
I can relate to that.
But in the cruise world, New Year's Eve is, it's essentially the Super Bowl of logistics. It is the single biggest, most complex night of the year for operational coordination.
That is a very, very apt comparison. It really is. It's the night where the industry has to deliver on its biggest promise.
It is
the dream, the champagne, the perfect fireworks view, that one perfect moment at midnight. But to make that single moment happen for tens of thousands of people at once, the logistical gymnastics are just incredible.
And that's what we're going to unpack. We're looking at a tale of two realities today. On one hand, you have this massive coordinated spectacle. We're talking about fireworks and fleets of ships. Literally parking or, anchoring together in places like Rio and Madeira. It's glitz, it's glamour, it's thousands and thousands of people toasting at midnight all at the same time.
Correct. That is the front of house experience. The perfect show.
But then, and this is the other side of the coin, we have the back of house reality, the operational truth of what happens when the ocean decides to intervene.
When things don't go according to the plan.
Exactly. And we have to talk about a major incident that happened on New Year's Day involving a search and rescue operation that, well, it really sobers you up.
And that is really the core of our mission today. We want to unpack the start of 2026 for the cruise industry, but we're not just going to, list off a bunch of ships.
Well,
we are looking at the logistics. How do you park? I think the total was, 19 massive vessels across 2 harbors to watch fireworks without them, bumping into each other.
A very expensive fender bender.
Exactly. And then how does a port handle 2 maiden calls? 2 brand new ships visiting for the very first time on the first morning of the year, when everyone is arguably, a little hungover.
And maybe most importantly, what happens to that carefully crafted minute-by-minute schedule when a man overboard alarm sounds in the middle of the night?
It's the full spectrum. It's about the birthing wars for the best views, right next to the solemn life and death protocols of search and rescue. It's everything.
Okay, so let's start with the party. The global party. We're taking you to Rio de Janeiro, Copacabana Beach.
Iconic. Absolutely iconic. If you asked any captain where the most high-pressure parking job is on New Year's Eve, I guarantee you a lot of them would say Rio.
It's the ultimate bucket list spot for this, right? Now, I want you to just picture this. It's New Year's Eve. It's approaching midnight, January 1st, 2026. You are standing on the deck of a cruise ship. It's warm. It's the peak of the Brazilian summer. But you are definitely not alone.
No, far from it. You're in a crowd of giants.
In Rio alone, we had 7 cruise ships anchored just offshore, not docked, just sitting there in the bay waiting for the show.
And let's put some numbers on that visual, because 7 ships doesn't sound like a lot until you really understand the scale of modern tonnage.
Right, these aren't fishing boats.
No. We aren't just talking about 7 metal hulls bobbing in the water. We're talking about humanity. Those 7 ships represent over 18,000 passengers.
18,000 in one spot. That's the size of a small town.
It absolutely is. And you can't forget the crew. That's nearly 7,500 crew members working to make that night perfect for the guests. So you have a combined population of roughly 25,500 people floating off the coast of Copacabana.
Wow.
All of them focused on one stretch of coastline for one specific event. That is a logistical density that is just hard to wrap your head around.
It's staggering. And looking at the list of ships that you pulled for this deep dive, it really feels like one cruise line in particular decided to, own the night.
Oh, absolutely. This was, for all intents and purposes, the MSC Cruises show. If you look at the manifest, MSC is the dominant player in the South American market right now. And their presence in Rio, well, it proved it.
How many did they have there?
They accounted for the bulk of that lineup with 5 different vessels. 5 of the 7.
5. Okay, let's run through them, because the scale of these specific ships really matters here. It's not just about the quantity of ships, but the type of ships, right?
It absolutely does. So leading the pack, you had the MSC Seaview. Now, for those who track ship architecture, the Seaview is a fascinating vessel. It was designed specifically for warm climates.
What does that mean in practice?
It means a lot of outdoor space. It has this massive wraparound promenade deck that's really low to the water, deck 8, I think. It's all designed to connect you to the sea, which, makes it the ultimate platform for watching fireworks over the water.
So it's not just a floating hotel block. It's designed to be a grandstand.
Exactly. It's an observation platform, and it was the largest ship in that Rio lineup. We are talking about a vessel that carries at maximum capacity 4,140 guests.
4,000 people on one ship. Just imagine the lines for the elevators at midnight.
Well, hopefully everyone is already on deck by then. But that ship wasn't just passing through. It was on a specific 7-night cruise starting and ending in Santos, the port for São Paulo. It's a very targeted itinerary for the local market.
And it wasn't alone?
No, you had the MSC Sinfonia, the MSC Fantasia, the MSC Harmonia. It's like a family reunion for the fleet. You can just imagine the captains on the radio coordinating their positions. Okay, you take this spot, I'll hold back a bit.
And then there's the fifth one, the MSC Preziosa. This one caught my eye because it wasn't just a regular cruise, right? This wasn't your typical book a cabin on the website situation.
No, not at all. This is where the business model of cruising gets really interesting and really specialized. The MSC Preziosa represents what we call event cruising.
Okay, break that down.
It wasn't selling just a standard holiday voyage. The entire ship was chartered, rented out by a company called Promo SM Eventos.
So a full ship charter, someone just rents the whole boat for a few days.
Lock, stock, and barrel. It was a 4-night themed cruise. They brought in local Brazilian artists, famous bands, DJs. They were putting on concerts right there on the ship.
So wait, try to visualize this contrast.
Yeah.
You have 4,000 people on the Seaview right next door having a traditional cruise experience.
Right. A gala dinner, maybe a string quartet playing in the atrium.
And right next to them, you have the Preziosa operating basically as a floating music festival. Thumping bass, stage lights, a completely different energy.
All watching the same fireworks. It's wild, isn't it? It just shows how segmented the market has become. You can be in the exact same harbor, looking at the exact same view, but having a completely different onboard vibe.
I love that. The product is totally different.
Precisely. And speaking of different products, we have to look at the outliers. Because while MSC totally dominated the scene, they weren't the only ones there. You also had Costa Cruises.
That makes sense. Costa is historically huge in South America.
Right. They were there with the Costa Fabulosa. It was coming up from Buenos Aires on an 8-night trip. That's a classic route. The Argentina to Brazil run for the holidays.
It's 6 of the 7. Who was the last one?
And this is the one that really stands out to me. The one that, as an analyst, makes me smile because it just breaks all the rules. The Hamburg.
The Hamburg?
Yeah.
I feel like I haven't heard of that one as much in the major headlines.
And that's because it's tiny, at least compared to the giants we just mentioned. It's operated by a German line, Plan Tours, and it only holds 420 passengers.
Wait. 420? You just said the Seaview has 4,140.
Exactly. The Hamburg is literally 1/10 the size of the MSC Seaview. Just try to imagine that visual contrast in the harbor at night. You have these massive, towering resort ships, 20 decks high, lights blazing everywhere, and then this intimate, much smaller vessel just bobbing amongst them.
Like a rowboat next to a skyscraper.
Right.
Well, okay, maybe not a rowboat, but
Yeah.
You get the idea. It's a completely different scale of maritime engineering.
It's David and Goliath. It really is. But here is the cool part, and this is where we really get into the concept of the luxury of time in cruising.
Go on.
The itinerary for the Hamburg was completely different. The big MSC ships, they're mostly doing these local loops. Santos, Rio, maybe down to Uruguay and back, short, punchy, mass market trips. The goal is to get them on, show them a good time, get them off.
Turnover is the name of the game in that market.
Exactly. But the Hamburg is on a marathon, a 23-night voyage.
23 nights. Wow. That is a serious commitment from a passenger.
It is. It started all the way over in the Canary Islands. It crossed the entire Atlantic, stopped in Maceió, Ilhéus, Salvador along the Brazilian coast, and then arrived in Rio for the big night.
That sounds incredible.
And here is the kicker. This is the key logistical difference.
Okay.
When the fireworks end, usually around 12:30 or 1:00 a.m., the big ships, the Seaview, the Fabulosa, they have to move. They've got schedules to keep. They have thousands of people to offload and onload at the next port in just a few hours.
Right, time is money. And that pier slot in Santos is waiting for them. They can't be late.
So they disperse pretty quickly to continue their loops. But the Hamburg, because it's on this long, leisurely itinerary, it's scheduled to stay in Rio for 2 full days after the fireworks.
Oh, now that is luxury. That is the real difference.
That is the difference between being on a bus schedule and having a private tour. Because it's small and because of the nature of that 23-night itinerary, they can afford to just sit there. They let their guests wake up on New Year's Day, have a relaxed breakfast, and then enjoy Rio while the port completely clears out.
So while the 18,000 other people are rushing off to their next port, dealing with disembarkation briefings and packing their bags, the 420 people in the Hamburg are just ordering another caipirinha and enjoying an unobstructed view of Sugarloaf Mountain.
Without any of the crowds. It's a perfect example. It highlights that even within one singular event, New Year's Eve in Rio, there are vastly different ways to experience it, and it all depends on the ship you book. The hardware dictates the entire experience.
I love that. Okay, so that's the South American party, a huge, massive celebration. But we mentioned this was a global celebration, so let's fly across the Atlantic. Because while Rio is, the party capital, there's another place that is just as famous for this gathering of the fleet phenomenon.
Madeira, specifically the port of Funchal.
Funchal. Now, for those who haven't been, you have to describe the setting. Why is this place, a relatively small Portuguese island in the middle of the Atlantic, why is it such a magnet for cruise ships on New Year's Eve?
It's the geography, pure and simple. Funchal has this incredible natural amphitheater effect. The city is built on hills that rise steeply up from the harbor.
So it's not a flat coastline.
Not at all. It's like a bowl. So when the ships park in the harbor, they aren't just looking at a flat line of buildings. They're looking up at a wall of city lights climbing the mountainside. And when the fireworks start, they're not just in one spot. They're launched from the shore, from barges on the water, and from different stations all the way up in the mountains.
So everyone on the decks has basically a stadium seat to a 360-degree show.
It is absolutely incredible. It's world famous for it. And the cruise lines, they know this. The demand to be in Funchal for New Year's Eve is massive. The numbers here are actually even higher than Rio, at least in terms of ship count.
Really? I would have thought Rio was the peak.
Rio had 7 ships. Funchal had 12.
12 ships, all in one harbor. That sounds incredibly crowded.
Well, in is a relative term. Some of them dock at the pier, others anchor out in the bay. But yes, 12 cruise ships all gathering for that same fireworks display. We are looking at over 20,000 passengers.
Wow.
And nearly 10,000 crews. So you're talking about a temporary floating population of 30,000 people.
So that's even bigger than the Rio crowd.
It is, and the demographic is completely different. This is where market segmentation becomes fascinating to watch. In Rio, it was largely the Brazilian and South American market on those MSC and Costa ships. In Madeira, it is heavily European, specifically 2 major powerhouses, the German market and the British market.
So let's break that down. Who showed up for the German side?
The German heavyweights really came out swinging. You had TUI Cruises, which operates the My Ship fleet, and they didn't just send any old ship. They sent their newest, biggest, and best, the Mein Schiff Relax.
Mein Schiff Relax. Is that the actual name?
It is. It's part of their new Intuition class of ships. And it's really significant because it's the newest and largest in their lineup. It only entered service earlier in 2025.
So this is a brand new vessel.
Brand new. Spending its very first New Year's Eve in Madeira. That's a huge statement. That's TUI saying to the market, look at our shiny new toy. This is the place to be.
And they sent more than one.
Oh, yeah. It brought its sisters Mein Schiff 3 and Mein Schiff 7. So TUI had this massive coordinated presence of 3 ships. And you had Ada, the other big German line, the one that's recognizable by the giant lips painted on the hull.
Right.
They were represented by the Ada Bella. So the Germans are very, very well represented.
Okay, so that's the German contingent. What about the British? Who came from the UK?
The British contingent was out in full force, which makes a lot of sense given the long history between the UK and Madeira. It's a classic holiday spot. You had P&O, probably the most famous British line with the Arcadia. You had Fred Olsen with the Bullet, a real classic favorite for traditional cruisers.
Who are the big names?
And the specialists.
Right.
You had Saga Cruises, which is a very specific over 50s luxury market. And they sent both of their new ships, the spirit of discovery and the spirit of adventure.
Both of them. They sent their entire boutique fleet.
The whole fleet. And then you had Marella cruises with the Marella Voyager. I mean, it's like a who's who of the UK cruise industry. If you're a British cruiser, you probably bumped into your neighbors in the Funchal harbor that night.
It really is. It's so interesting to think about the logistics of that. You have 12 ships. You mentioned some dock and some anchor. How do they decide who gets the good spots? Is it a fight? A lottery?
It's a mix of long-term planning and what you could call berthing wars. The lines will book these flights years, sometimes 5 or 6 years in advance.
Ugh.
Usually, the ships that arrive earliest or the cruise lines that have the most clout or a long historic relationship with the port, they get the prime dockside spots.
Which is a huge perk for the passengers, right?
It's a huge perk. If you're docked, your guests can just walk right off the ship into Funchal during the day on January 1st. They can go to the market, they can grab a coffee, stretch their legs on solid ground.
And if you're anchored out in the bay?
If you're anchored, you have to tender back and forth. You're reliant on those little lifeboats turned taxis, which can be slow, there can be lines. And if the Atlantic swell picks up, it can be a bit of a bumpy ride.
So docking is definitely preferred.
For convenience, yes. But honestly, for the fireworks themselves, sometimes being anchored a bit further out gives you a better panoramic view. You aren't craning your neck looking straight up. You see the whole sweep of the island and the sky.
That's a good point. Perspective matters.
And there were a couple of other really interesting operational details in that Madeira lineup. We mentioned the Mein Schiff Relax being brand new, but we also had Silversea's Silver Muse.
Okay, the luxury line, ultra luxury.
Exactly. And this was a debut call for the Silver Muse in Funchal, but it had a little twist. It had just come out of a major dry dock refurbishment in Italy.
So it had that fresh paint smell. New carpets.
Fresh everything. It literally sailed from the shipyard in Italy,
Right.
and Madeira was one of its first stops on its way down to the Canary Islands. So you have a ship that is technically not new, but it's in that pristine post-refurbishment state. It probably still had that new ship smell for the guests.
And you mentioned Phoenix Rise and Sartania there, too. It just
Yeah.
seems like if you were a ship spotter, Funchal on January 1st was absolute heaven.
It was absolute heaven. You have the massive modern TUI ships, the classic British vessels, the ultra-luxury Silversea. It's a living, breathing cross-section of the entire European cruise industry in one bay. It really shows you just how diverse the options are for a traveler these days.
Okay, so we've had the massive parties, Rio and Madeira. Tens of thousands of people celebrating, champagne flowing, captains blowing the ship's whistles at midnight. It's a huge success. But as the sun comes up on January 1st, 2026, the industry doesn't stop.
No, it never stops. The maritime world is 247/365.
And while those 12 ships were clearing out of Madeira and the 7 were leaving Rio, another island was waking up to a very, very busy morning. We need to talk about St. Martin.
St. Martin is always busy. I mean, it's one of the Caribbean's premier ports, a shopping mall with a beach attached, but January 1st, 2026 was really special.
They had a double inaugural call. That sounds very official.
It is very official. And for those who don't know the jargon, an inaugural or a maiden call is the very first time a specific ship visits a specific port. It's like a birthday, essentially.
One's a big deal for the port.
A huge deal. It signifies new business, a new relationship. It shows the industry that you're a port of call that matters. And for St. Martin to have two of them on the same morning.
On New Year's Day, no less.
On New Year's Day. That is a massive flex for the port. It's sending a signal to the entire industry. We are a top-tier destination, and we can handle anything you throw at us, even on a holiday.
So who are the two guests of honor?
It was another perfect study in contrast, much like the Hamburg versus the Sea View in Rio. On one side of the pier, you had the Sun Princess.
The new Princess ship. The one with the giant glass dome on top.
The Behemoth. This is the largest ship ever built for Princess cruises. It comes in at 177,882 gross tons. It's part of their new Sphere class.
That is just a monster of a ship.
It is, and it's not just big, it's technologically advanced. It's powered by LNG liquefied natural gas, which is the new gold standard for reducing emissions. And it carries up to 4,300 passengers.
4,300 people all trying to get off the ship at once.
Yep. And here's the interesting context about this particular visit. For the Sun Princess, this was a one-off.
What do you mean by that?
I mean, the Sun Princess wasn't scheduled to come back to St. Martin for the rest of 2026. This was its only planned stop there for the year.
Really? That's it? Why just stop once and then, goes to the island?
It's all about deployment logistics. This was the final port call of a 7-night holiday cruise that started in Fort Lauderdale. So it stopped in St. Martin on January 1st, and then after that, it's likely repositioning or moving to a different rotation of Caribbean islands. Its next scheduled visit isn't until December of 2027.
Wow. So if you were in St. Martin on New Year's Day and you saw that giant ship with the sphere on the side, you were witnessing something pretty rare for that year.
Exactly. It was a special cameo appearance. Hello, it's nice to meet you. Goodbye.
And who was the second ship making its debut?
That was the Allura from Oceania Cruises.
Okay, totally different vibe.
A completely different world. Oceania is what we call boutique luxury. The Allura is about 68,000 gross tons. So roughly a third of the size of the Sun Princess. It carries only about 1,200 passengers.
So we're talking foodies, luxury travelers, people who want a country club casual atmosphere, not a mega resort.
That's it, exactly. This is part of their Allura class, which just debuted in 2025. The entire focus is on fine dining and destination-intensive cruising. And unlike the Sun Princess, the Allura is putting down roots in St. Martin.
What does that mean?
It means it's coming back. It's scheduled to return in March of 2026, and then it's going to be a regular frequent visitor the following winter season. It's building a long-term relationship.
So let me get this straight. On one pier, you have the massive 4,300 passenger floating city making a rare one-time appearance. And right next to it, the 1,200 passenger luxury ship that's basically starting a long-term relationship with the island.
And just try to imagine the port operations. It's 8:00 a.m. on New Year's Day. Every single port worker, every taxi driver, every shop owner, they're probably a little tired from the night before.
I would imagine so.
And suddenly, you have 5,500 new people plus a couple thousand crew members spilling off these two ships into Phillipsburg.
The taxi drivers must have been loving it, even if they were tired. A great start to the year for them.
Oh, the transport surge would have been immediate. You've got the mass market crowd from Sun Princess looking for beach transfers and big group island tours. Then you have the luxury crowd from Allura, maybe looking for private excursions, high-end dining reservations, or boutique shopping. It's a huge stress test for the island's entire tourism infrastructure right at the very start of the year.
And you said there are ceremonies involved too, right? Since it's a maiden call?
Yes, this is a wonderful maritime tradition that goes back centuries. Since it was a maiden call for both ships, the port officials have to run around doing plaque exchanges with both captains.
So they literally run from one ship to the other.
Pretty much. They go aboard, meet the captain on the bridge. There are speeches. Welcome to St. Martin. We're so glad to have you. Here is a nice wooden plaque with our port crest on it. The captain gives them a ship's plaque in return. They take a photo. It's very formal.
And they had to do that twice in one morning while managing thousands of arriving tourists. Hats off to the St. Martin port team.
It's why they projected over 1.5 million passengers for 2025. They know how to handle volume, but January 1st was definitely starting 2026 with a bang.
So, okay, we've had the massive party in Rio, the huge gathering in Madeira, this operational triumph in St. Martin. It really sounds like the perfect, flawless start to the year for the industry.
It does. It sounds exactly like the brochure, doesn't it? But and there is always a but in this industry. The ocean is unpredictable, and so are people.
We really have to shift gears here. This is the other side of that coin we talked about, because while all of this planned celebration and call money was happening, there was another ship sailing north of Cuba where things went very, very wrong.
This is the sobering reality we mentioned at the top of the show, and this involves the new Statendam.
A Holland America line ship.
Yes, a Pinnacle-class ship. A beautiful vessel, very classic lines, holds about 2,600 guests. It was on a standard 7-night Eastern Caribbean cruise. They had been in Amber Cove in the Dominican Republic for New Year's Eve, and they were sailing back toward Florida.
So everything is normal. The cruise is winding down.
Until the early hours of January 1st, New Year's Day. An emergency call goes out. The specific alarm is man overboard.
I think for most passengers, that is the single most chilling announcement you can possibly hear on a ship. It changes the entire atmosphere in an instant.
It stops everything cold. The reports from passengers on board indicate that they heard announcements at first, just asking a specific guest to report to guest services.
Which is the first sign something is wrong. They're doing a head count, trying to find someone.
Right. It's the first step. They're trying to verify if the person is just in the bathroom, or maybe they fell asleep in a deck chair somewhere. They page them over and over. But when they don't show up, the tone changes. Then came the captain's confirmation that the ship was stopping and conducting a search operation.
And do we know any details about the guest?
Not their name, of course, out of privacy, but the Coast Guard later identified the person as a 77-year-old female guest.
77. That just adds another layer of sadness to it.
And Holland America later released a statement with a very difficult detail. They had reviewed the ship's CCTV, the security cameras. And this is the tragic part. They stated that the footage appeared to show the guest going overboard intentionally from one of the lower decks, Deck 3.
Oh, that is just heartbreaking.
It's deeply, deeply tragic. But from an operational standpoint, and this is where we have to put our analyst hats on for a moment, once that person is in the water, the why doesn't matter in that immediate moment. The rescue is all that matters. The bridge team has to act instantly.
What happens on the bridge in that situation?
Yeah.
You have a 99,000-ton ship, probably moving at, 18 or 20 knots?
It is controlled chaos, the absolute highest level of professional response. The ship immediately has to begin to reverse course. They mark the exact GPS location where the incident likely happened, but you have to remember, a ship moves fast. By the time you verify it on video or by the time a witness reports it and it's confirmed, you might be 2, 3, even 4 miles away from that spot.
So they have to turn this massive ship around in the dark. It's not like turning a car.
No, it takes miles to stop and turn a vessel that large. They executed what's likely a Williamson turn or a similar maneuver designed to backtrack perfectly along their own wake. And then they start the search patterns. The reports from on board mention a zigzag pattern.
So they're just going back and forth across the ocean in the dark, looking for a person in the waves.
For 8 hours.
Yeah.
For 8 solid hours, the ship did that. Just imagine being a passenger on board. The party is over. The ship is moving slowly back and forth. Every crew member available is likely on the rails with binoculars acting as a lookout. The searchlights are sweeping the water. The mood would be incredibly somber.
And they called for help, I assume.
Immediately. The U.S. Coast Guard was called in, Sector Key West. They deployed one of their cutters, the USCGC William Trump. They sent an MH-60 Jayhawk helicopter all the way from their air station in Clearwater, Florida.
That's a long flight to get out there.
It is. Between the ship's own search and the Coast Guard assets, they covered an area of approximately 690 square miles.
690 square miles. That's huge. That's bigger than the entire city of London.
It's a massive area, and yet when you're looking for a single person in the ocean, it is a needle in a haystack. The ocean is big, the waves are choppy, there are currents pushing you off course. Even with thermal cameras, even with helicopters, it is an incredibly, incredibly difficult task.
And sadly, the outcome wasn't what everyone on board must have been hoping for.
No. Late on January 1st, the Coast Guard made the difficult decision to suspend the active search pending any new information. It's a harsh, brutal reality of the sea.
It's just such a heavy reminder. We talk about these ships as these floating cities, as resorts, but they are vessels at sea, subject to the laws of the sea.
They are. And this single incident had a major ripple effect. We talked about how the schedules in Rio and St. Martin were so precise. Well, the new Statendam had a precise schedule, too. It was supposed to make a port call in Key West on January 2nd.
But you can't search the ocean for 8 hours and still make your port time.
Absolutely impossible. Not only did they spend 8 hours searching, but they had to backtrack significantly to get to the search area. The scheduled call to Key West was scrapped. It was canceled.
So the passengers just lost a port day.
They did. It became a day at sea. The ship just headed slowly back to Fort Lauderdale for its scheduled on-time return on January 3rd.
It must change the whole mood of the voyage for those last couple of days.
Oh, completely. You go from a New Year's Eve celebration to a search and rescue operation to a port cancellation to a very quiet and somber return home. It reminds us that the cruise lines can plan the fireworks, they can build the amazing LNG ships, but they cannot control human nature or the fundamental physics of a rescue at sea.
You mentioned some stats on this earlier. How common is this?
It's more common than people like to think, but it is statistically very rare given the millions and millions of people who cruise safely every year. CLIA, the Cruise Lines International Association, cites about 19 to 25 overboard incidents annually worldwide.
19 to 25 a year.
Across the entire global fleet. So on average, it happens roughly twice a month somewhere in the world. And despite all the technology, the cameras, the new thermal sensors, the man-overboard detection systems, finding someone in open water is a desperate race against time that tragically is often lost.
It really puts this whole deep dive into perspective, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. It balances the narrative. We can't just talk about the highs without acknowledging the lows.
We started this conversation talking about the sheer glitz of Rio, The 18,000 people cheering, the MSC Sea View lighting up the night sky. Then we move to the operational precision in St. Martin with the giant Sun Princess. And then we have this. This solemn, difficult reality.
It is the dual nature of cruising. On one hand, it is a logistical marvel. I mean, think about the coordination to get 19 ships into position for fireworks. Think about the supply chains required to feed everyone on the Sun Princess for a week. It's a miracle of modern engineering and planning.
But the great variable is always the ocean.
The ocean and the people. You can't plan for every human contingency.
That's very true.
And that's the core of it. You can book a cruise for the fireworks in Rio. You can book it for the quiet luxury of the Allura. But ultimately, you are stepping onto a machine, a vessel, that has to obey maritime law and the fundamental reality of its environment. And sometimes, that reality is harsh.
So after looking at all this, what does this all mean for you, the listener?
I think it's about having a deeper appreciation for the complexity of it all. When you are on that ship and you're enjoying that sunset cocktail, just take a second to realize the immense, invisible machinery that is working all around you to keep it all running smoothly.
And the people making it happen.
And thousands of people. And also to realize that when things do go wrong, there is a serious, solemn, and highly professional protocol that kicks in instantly to handle it. It's not taken lightly.
It's not just a vacation, it's an expedition. Even if there is a really, really good buffet.
A very well-catered expedition. That's a perfect way to put it.
Well, this has been a truly fascinating look at the start of 2026 for the cruise industry. From the highest of highs at Copacabana to the heavy silence of a search grid off the coast of Cuba.
It's the full, unvarnished picture.
So here is a final thought to leave you with. As these ships get bigger and bigger, like that massive Sun Princess, and as the fleets continue to grow like those 19 ships we saw in Rio and Madeira combined, the industry is becoming better and better at manufacturing these amazing, perfect moments. They can guarantee the fireworks display, they can guarantee the state dinner will be cooked perfectly.
But they can't guarantee the sea state, and they can't guarantee what's in every passenger's heart and mind.
Exactly. When an emergency happens in international waters, we're reminded that these floating cities are still at their core just that ships. Vessels at sea, reliant on maritime law, reliant on the Coast Guard, and ultimately reliant on the physics of the ocean.
A very humbling thought to start the new year.
Thanks for listening to Cruise News. Visit cruisenews.io to catch up on the latest updates and sign up for free email alerts.
Safe sailing, everyone.